We all have a unique spark within us, a potential. We sense that if we really applied ourselves, we can achieve glorious things. We can be our best selves. But it's easy to waste this potential, and unfortunately, many people fall short of their ideal. Why is this? In this video, I'll outline a framework to give clarity to this problem, which is tied to our purpose in life, and provide a roadmap to help you bring out your potential. The core idea is the concept of fruitfulness. It's a metaphor that compares humans to fruit-producing trees. Just like how trees do their natural job bearing fruit, so we humans thrive when we bear fruit. We don't bear literal fruit, but our fruit are the things we produce, that come out of us. This metaphor is baked into our language. Consider words like productivity, production, productive, producing, and product. These are all related to the word produce, which is basically fruit. We feel that it's good to be productive, otherwise we'd waste away. This way of understanding our lives has been around since ancient times. In fact, this association is established in the very first page of the Bible, in the creation story of Genesis. It's very cool how it makes this connection. You may be familiar that the creation narrative is ordered into 7 days, but there's a specific ordering to them. The first 3 days are about God dividing the various realms of the world, and days 4 through 6 are about filling the various realms with their inhabitants. And there's a matching between these sets of days, between realm and inhabitant. In the 7th day, God rests, and nothing new is added. I'll focus on the matching days of days 3 and 6, which both share something special. Only on these days is there a bonus creation, 2 times where God says that what he made was good. The bonus creation of the 3rd day is described here. And God said, "Let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind, on the earth." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 3rd day. This is the first sign of life in the creation narrative. There's emphasis placed on trees and the fruit they bear, which contain seeds. The bonus creation of day 6 is also a significant breakthrough, described later in the chapter. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them. And God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." Humans are the bonus creation of day 6, and they are portrayed as the pinnacle of creation, having dominion, or rule, over all the world and the things in it. There's also an important detail of humans being made in God's image, male and female. Before the day 6 ends, there's also a mention of the bonus creations from day 3, where they are given additional purpose. And God said, "Behold, I've given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I've given every green plant for food." And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there's evening, and there's morning, the 6th day. So those are the bonus creations. There's a pattern of 3 plus 1 bonus weaved throughout this structure. Day 7 is actually another bonus, but that's beyond the scope of this video. Through this structure, we can see that there's a strong parallel between trees and humans. Not only are they both bonus creations, but fruit is associated with both of them. With humans, fruitfulness is even related to the purpose of our existence that we're granted. Did you catch it? I'll repeat it again. And God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." You might be thinking, isn't being fruitful here referring to having children and passing on our genes? And yes, children are a kind of fruit that humans can produce, and raising our offspring is a meaningful purpose. We see these concepts of fruit and children tied together in a later conversation in the book of Genesis between a woman named Rachel and her husband Jacob. When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. She said to Jacob, "Give me children, or I shall die." Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" Children are called the fruit of the womb, and God grants this fruit. In addition, the Hebrew word that's used for one's offspring or descendants is zerah, which is another word for seed, another connection. However, if the purpose of our species is to be fruitful and multiply, which means having children, then what about those who can't or don't have the opportunity to have children, like Rachel in that verse? Does that mean that they are failures as humans, unable to fulfill their purpose? Not necessarily, because there's more than one way for a human to be fruitful. For instance, we can look at another verse that talks about the purpose for humans, located in the book of Ephesians. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand, that we should walk in them. The word created is used here, which links it back to the framework of Genesis 1. Here, it says that our purpose is good works. Concepts of fruit and works are closely related and basically interchangeable, as they both describe one's output. For example, they are tied together in this verse in Titus. In the letter, people learn to devote themselves to good works, so as to help cases of urgent need, and not be unfruitful. So good works is a type of fruit. But the question still remains, what exactly are we talking about when we use the word fruit for humans? There's a simple answer that encompasses all the usages. Our fruit, or our works, are acts of creation. It's all the value we create. Now, value creation is a bit of a buzzword in the world of business and finance. People say things like, value being added to the economy, or how can our company create more value? But the essence behind these things is our theme of fruitfulness. Value creation is discussed and important because it relates to our prosperity as a collective. Let me illustrate this point with a pie. This pie represents the wealth of a society and is divided among various people. But if one of them wanted to be more prosperous, then it could only be gained at the expense of others. This is true if the scenario was a zero-sum game, where only a limited amount of resources exist. But what if the pie can be expanded? Then it is possible for everyone to have more. There's a net gain in the total wealth that exists. This is value creation. But is it actually possible for the pie to expand, and how would it work? This tension is captured in this verse from the book of Proverbs. Whoever is wicked covets the spoil of evildoers, but the root of the righteous bears fruit. These ancient proverbs contain a lot of meaning in a few words. The first half describes people who are trapped in a zero-sum or scarcity mindset. They aren't satisfied with what they have and seek to take the share of others through underhanded tactics like deception, exploitation, or violence. People don't normally give up their share willingly, so force would be needed. In contrast, the righteous archetype here has more of an abundance mindset and is able to increase the share of the pie for themselves and others through bearing fruit. Bearing fruit is like creating something out of nothing. If you consider a tree, there is a point when the fruit didn't exist, but then it is brought forth into existence, able to be eaten and enjoyed. Value is added in this process. Same with children, the fruit of the womb. When babies are born, something new is added to the world and the pie is expanded. Who knows the potential impact a child could have in their lifetime? So it is with all fruitfulness. To reiterate, fruits are acts of creation. They are your gifts to the world. We are created in the image of God, so it's fitting that we are meant to be creative like God in how He created the world. And there are many kinds of things we can create. Art would certainly be a kind of fruit. This would include products like books, film, music, paintings, computer programs, making clothes, and the list goes on. When we enjoy the art of others, we are consuming the fruit of their labor. We can observe that the creation reflects the mind of its creator. There's a spirit of the artist that's imprinted into the artwork, like their faith or the way they see the world. It's analogous to how information in the DNA is passed on from the parent to the child. What you produce reflects who you are. And because everyone is different with their personalities or experiences they've gone through, there are unique contributions that only you can make. This is another way we can understand the idea of fruitful and multiply. You spread your ideas and your unique style through your creations and other contributions to society, which exist outside of you and can live on and influence people even after you die. Creative acts are also important for relationships. Bonds between people don't form automatically, so bonds that exist must be maintained, or else they fade away. The default tendency is entropy, so whenever a good relationship forms, there's some creation there that defies gravity. In a friendship, a family, a community, or even in an entire society, there needs to be some or all of the people bearing fruit to create a healthy environment for the whole group to thrive. This would be the good works which we referenced earlier, which include actions like helping others when they need it, putting effort to organizing events, guiding people down the right path, or emotional support and care. How we act and how we speak are all fruit that we naturally produce. Just like how a tree's fruit is enjoyed by others, so our fruit is meant to be enjoyed by others. It's common for people to come to you for your fruit, the value you provide them. But even though fruit is primarily for others, you also benefit from it as well, as it says in Proverbs. From the fruit of his mouth a man is satisfied with good, and the work of man's hand comes back to him. And the backslider in heart will be filled with the fruit of his ways, and a good man will be filled with the fruit of his ways. Regarding communities, we can also apply the fruitful metaphor not only to individual people, but groups of people as well. It's like a collective output. An obvious example is the media that comes out from different cultures. If we were to consider products from cultures like India, Japan, or America, we can see that they each have a distinct character to them, even if they were created by different individuals, and we can see them as fruits from their cultures. Fruit can also be the effects of certain cultural beliefs. For example, it's well known that increasing female education results in lower birth rates, so we can see the consequence as a fruit of the belief system that drives it, whether you think it is a good or bad thing. Another example of collective fruit is a fandom that used to be active, but is now dead. It's a dead community because nothing new is being produced in these spaces. There is no fruit. In the Bible, we see God examining the communal fruit of his chosen people of Israel in this allegory from Isaiah chapter 5. Let me sing for my beloved my love song concerning his vineyard. My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He dug it and cleared it of stones, and planted it with choice vines. He built a watchtower in the midst of it, and hewed out a wine vat in it. And he looked for it to yield grapes, but it yielded wild grapes. A verse later explains what these metaphors mean. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah are his pleasant planting. And he looked for justice, but behold, bloodshed. For righteousness, but behold, an outcry. We see here the kind of fruits that God is looking for in a collective, which is justice and righteousness. We instinctively know that societies are better when they produce this. But instead, God sees that the society is producing bloodshed and outcry from the victims, which indicates that there has been something fundamentally wrong with the way they have been living. So now that we have a solid grasp of what fruits humans can produce, it's time to look at the process of how to bear fruit, so that you may know how to be fruitful. There are principles involved, and anyone can bear good fruit if 3 things are in place. Once the conditions are met, the process is very natural. The first prerequisite that you need is freedom and space. It's difficult to be productive or fruitful when you're constantly being oppressed by hostile forces. You have no space to do your own thing. The ideal conditions for fruitfulness is not in the land of slavery, held captive to foreign powers, nor in the wilderness where you're always worried about survival, but in the promised land. We can draw out this principle from day 3 of the creation story, where we saw the word fruit first appear in the Bible. Lots of cool things in day 3. And God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And here's the bonus creation of day 3. And God said, "Let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to his kind, on the earth." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the 3rd day. We see here that separating the waters from the dry land was necessary before the plants could grow and bear fruit, since they can't do that on the sea. The waters represent chaos, and the dry land represents order. Another cool detail is that the Hebrew word used for brought forth is yatsah, which means to go out. This is also the main word used to describe the people of Israel being brought out of slavery in the Exodus story. For example, in this verse, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery." Just like how God brings forth the plants so they can be fruitful, so God brings his people out of slavery so they can be fruitful. You may think this connection is a stretch, since the word just means to go out, which is pretty generic. It's true that this is a hazy connection on its own, but consider, how were the people brought out of Egypt? This will be revealing. Exodus chapter 14. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the people of Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. And then next chapter, at the end of their praise song, we get this. "You'll bring them in and plant them on your own mountain, the place, O Lord, which you have made for your abode, the sanctuary, O Lord, which your hands have established. The Lord will reign forever and ever." When the horses of Pharaoh, with his chariots and his horsemen, went into the sea, The Lord brought back the waters of the sea upon them, but the people of Israel walked on dry ground in the midst of the sea. Come on, there's clearly a strong connection between the creation event in Genesis 1 and the salvation event in the Exodus, through the division of the waters and the dry land appearing, so people can have space to thrive. Creation and salvation are closely linked concepts, and they're both seen as works of God. God is the one who provides the freedom for us to be fruitful and fulfill our purpose. It's not something we can do for ourselves, so we can call this prerequisite the grace of God. God also helps create space in the midst of conflict, as we see in the story of Isaac, who is just looking for a place to settle down. But when Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found there a well of spring, or living water, the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, "This water is ours." So he called the name of the well Esek, because they contended with him. Then they dug another well, and they quarreled over that also, so he called its name Sitnah. And he moved from there and dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it. So he called its name Rehoboth, saying, "For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land." Interesting how it's the third well. With this third well, Isaac credits God for stopping the chaos and conflict and giving him and his party room to bear fruit in the land. Fighting amongst each other kills our collective potential, which is why it's warned against so much in the New Testament. One of Isaac's descendants, Joseph, also experienced a lot of turbulence in his life, but was able to find his footing after a while. He reflects this way after his second son was born. The name of his second he called Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. The word Ephraim sounds like the Hebrew for making fruitful. The lesson is that we require freedom to be fruitful, and God is able to give room in otherwise hostile environments. You'll have different levels of freedom throughout your life, and you should use it well if you have it. But this is only the first prerequisite. There's more that's needed. The second principle is that you need to be connected to something else to produce fruit, like a life source or battery. Trees don't produce fruit in a vacuum, but they have to be connected to the ground to have the water and nutrients required. People also don't produce children by themselves, but there needs to be a prior union between male and a female. It follows that if you want to bear fruit, you also have to be united to a source of some kind. This principle is directly stated in John 15, where Jesus speaks to his disciples about being fruitful the night before his death. He says, "Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me, and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit, for apart from me you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away like a branch and withers, and the branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples." Notice that a branch cannot bear fruit by itself is spoken of as a general principle, not only applying to this one analogy. The key word throughout this passage is abide, which is the condition to be fruitful in him, and aside from which we cannot do anything. We can think of abiding as being in relationship or communion with Jesus, after which the fruit comes naturally. But just because we're attached to the true vine, it doesn't mean we'll automatically abide. Jesus states a clause for the person that fails to abide, implying that there's some choice and responsibility from us. Verse 10 clarifies how we can actively abide. "If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I've kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love." The key to abiding and remaining in the source, leading to fruit, is obedience. This connection between obedience and fruitfulness is also a pattern in the Old Testament, like in Deuteronomy 30. "The Lord your God will make you abundantly prosperous in all the work of your hand, in the fruit of your womb, and in the fruit of your cattle, and in the fruit of your ground. For the Lord will again take delight in prospering you, as he took delight in your fathers." And here's the condition: when you obey the voice of the Lord your God, to keep his commandments and his statutes that are written in this book of the law, when you turn to the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. This is a promise. It's pretty simple. Fruitfulness comes naturally if we abide, and we abide if we are in obedience. So the only variable we need to concern ourselves with is submitting ourselves to the Lord, and everything else sorts itself out. This also means that we should fear transgressing the boundaries, since the whole chain breaks and we suddenly lose our intimacy with God. We don't strive to obey the commands to be saved, but to abide. But Jesus is only one source that we can join with to produce fruit. There are other ones as well, since bad fruit doesn't come out of nowhere. Bad fruit are like poison that harms others, creations that bring destruction. One of these bad sources that result in this is sin. The first time the word sin appears in the Bible is in the Cain and Abel story in the early chapters of Genesis, and it's interesting how sin is characterized here. The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry, and why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it." Again, there are a lot of conditional language here. Sin is portrayed as an external entity that's seeking to take over Cain, but Cain has a choice on whether he'll let it by giving into his anger, or whether he'll subdue it and stay on the right path, which God promises will be worthwhile. Unfortunately, he gives in to sin, and in the next verse we see the fruit that results. Cain spoke to Abel his brother, and when they're in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Bad things happen when people give in to sin. We must be wary about the influences of sin in our own lives so we don't produce terrible fruit, even if it's not as horrific as murder. But there's another source to warn about, the flesh, which represents our own human ability and desires. Galatians 5 talks about the dangers of this, as well as the way to overcome it. "But I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh, for these are opposed to each other, to keep you from doing the things you want to do. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law." Now the works of the flesh are evident: sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and things like these. I warn you, as I warned you before, that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. So in this passage, we see the works of the flesh contrasted with the fruits of the Spirit. It's a choice on whether we align with the flesh or the Spirit to produce their fruits, though by default we will be united with our flesh. I hope I've illustrated how necessary it is to be connected with the right life source. However, that alone is not enough, and there's one more ingredient needed to generate fruit: good old-fashioned hard work. As it says in Proverbs, "In all toil there is profit, but mere talk tends only to poverty." There's a certain level of energy required to bring things to fruition. You can't be half-hearted and expect to produce much fruit. It takes time, focus, and potentially some pain and sacrifice. Consider the process of childbirth. They don't call it labor for nothing. And even for trees, its fruit takes time to grow and mature before it is ripe. There's no escaping the process of painful discipline, risk, and toil for any valuable fruit. As it says in the letter to the Hebrews, "For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to all who have been trained by it." Jesus goes even farther, speaking of death as a requirement for fruitfulness. "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." Of course, he is foreshadowing the purpose of his coming death, though he speaks as if it's a general principle. Paul also references this principle, though he's speaking more figuratively than literal. Romans 7:4 says, "Likewise, my brothers, you also have died to the law through the body of Christ, so that you may belong to another, to him who has been raised from the dead, in order that we may bear fruit for God." Hard work can sometimes feel like we're giving ourselves over to death, like a sacrifice. The main reason why many of us are unfruitful and waste our potential is simply because we don't put in the work. Why is that? There are two enemies that hold us back from being productive: laziness and distraction. There's a reason why laziness is warned against so harshly in Proverbs, like in the following verse. "Whoever is slack in his work is a brother to him who destroys." There are two ways we can use our free time: production and consumption. Production mode is when we're actively bearing fruit and creating things, whereas consumption mode is more passive and we don't need much effort to be rewarded. We all know what consumption looks like. Things like TikTok and other social media, video games, watching TV all day, etc. Consumption is easy, but we'll feel unsatisfied if this is our lifestyle, like we're wasting our lives. It's because we are made to be productive and fruitful, and it's in that mode where we thrive. This is why prosperity and freedom can be bad for a person if they don't have a strong sense of purpose, as there are many distractions seeking to enslave them for profit. Not to say that all consumption is bad in moderation. Experiencing the fruits of others can help inform our own beliefs and worldview, but it becomes bad if it distracts you from the mission that you should be focusing on, your own fruitfulness and purpose. This is one of the lessons of Jesus' parable of the sower, which featured the 4 soils. I want to highlight what is said about the last 2 soils, since fruitfulness is mentioned. And others are the ones sown among thorns. They are those who hear the word, but the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches and the desire for other things enter in and choke the word, and it proves unfruitful. But those that were sown on the good soil are the ones who hear the word and accept it and bear fruit, 30-fold and 60-fold and 100-fold. These thorns represent distractions and desires in our heart that compete with our true purpose and can choke out our potential. To deal with it, you must prioritize production over consumption and other stuff in our hierarchy of priorities, and guard our creative time from distractions. So putting our elements together, we have our complete 3-step fruit-making formula. To make fruit equals freedom or God's grace, plus union with the life source, plus hard work and energy. This model works, but there's still something missing. I'll throw in a bonus factor to make the fruit really good, just like the 3+1 pattern in creation. Earlier, I stated that what you produce reflects who you are. An apple tree will only produce apples and not other fruit like figs. And not all fruit is good fruit. If you want to produce good fruit, you yourself must be of good quality. The higher the quality, the better the fruit. It is because of this principle that we can see what someone is like through examining the fruit they produce. Jesus speaks of this in the Sermon on the Mount. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will recognize them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? So, every healthy tree bears good fruit, but the diseased tree bears bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, you will recognize them by their fruits. Jesus later in the Gospel of Matthew applies this rule to call out the Pharisees, the religious leaders of his day, who were supposed to be righteous but weren't as connected to God as they appeared. Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit bad, for the tree is known by its fruit. You brood of vipers, how can you speak good when you are evil? For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. The good person out of his good treasure brings forth good, and the evil person out of his evil treasure brings forth evil. Jesus basically puts them on fraud watch based on their fruit. But what separates the one who produces good and the one who doesn't? What were the religious leaders missing? It ultimately comes down to what you put your trust in, where your faith is placed. This distinction of trust is made in Jeremiah 17. Thus says the Lord, "Cursed is the man who trusts in man and makes flesh his strength, whose heart turns away from the Lord. He is like a shrub in the desert, and shall not see any good come. He shall dwell in the parched places of the wilderness, in an uninhabited salt land. Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, whose trust is the Lord. He is like a tree planted by water, that sends out its roots by the stream, and does not fear when the heat comes, for its leaves remain green, and is not anxious in the year of drought, for it does not cease to bear fruit." The difference between these two allegorical trees is what they put their trust in, man or God. Cain didn't put his trust in the right thing, so he stumbled. But it's not only about the object of our faith, but about its quality. And that's the secret 4th ingredient, the quality of faith. Our actions flow out of our faith and reflects it, as it says in James chapter 2. What good is it, my brothers, if someone says that he has faith, but does not have works? Can that faith save him? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food, and one of you says to them, "Go in peace, be warm and filled," without giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? So also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. A dead faith doesn't produce any works, but a strong one bears good fruit. Is this a fixed thing, or can we strengthen it? Luckily, there are ways to sharpen our faith, and one of the main ways is through gaining spiritual knowledge. This dynamic is outlined in the opening of Colossians. And so, from the day we heard, we have not ceased to pray for you, asking that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will in all spiritual wisdom and understanding, so as to walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing to him, bearing fruit in every good work, and increasing in the knowledge of God. 2 Peter also gives a map of what to focus on relating to knowledge. For this very reason, make every effort to supplement your faith with virtue, and virtue with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control, and self-control with steadfastness, and steadfastness with godliness, and godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love. For if these qualities are yours and are increasing, they keep you from being ineffective or unfruitful in the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. And how could I forget? One of the main ways you could get knowledge to mature your faith is by studying the words that God has already revealed, stored here in the Bible. Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. In all that he does, he prospers. I hope I've shown how powerful the Bible can be for understanding life. These words have been making people fruitful for thousands of years. We've explored a wide range of passages in this video, all touching on the idea of fruitfulness. And there's even more that wasn't covered, showing how important this theme is throughout the scriptures. We've covered many different points, but there are a couple of core points that I don't want to be lost in the mix. The main idea is that being fruitful, producing acts of creation, is the purpose of our lives that fulfills us, and is how we should be focusing on cultivating our unique spark and potential. You have something valuable to offer the world. And the other important idea is that God, the Creator, plays a major role for us to be able to bear good and lasting fruit, through the salvation and freedom He provides, and being the life source we can connect to. I don't think it's possible for anyone to be who they were meant to be without Him. Even if you doubt your capability, God can give the ability to make anyone fruitful, just like how He gave Rachel the ability to bear children after being barren for so long. If you don't know Him well, I'd encourage you to prioritize seeking Him more. If you want to deepen your spiritual knowledge in a practical and fun way, that's what my channel is here for. These videos are my fruit, and they reflect who I am and what I believe. If you found this video insightful, I'm sure you'll enjoy some of my other topical breakdowns from a biblical perspective. And subscribe if you want to see more of the fruit from this tree, that is, the videos I'll produce in the future. Anyway, God bless.